The scent of gunpowder and whiskey hung in the air as Olivia Thornton stood at the grimy window of the Scarlet Feather, watching the dusty main street of Chisholm Ranch, New Mexico, a place where dreams came to die and hers had been buried 3 years ago. The year was 1876, and at 22 years old, Olivia knew more about men's cruelty than most women twice her age. Her pale fingers traced the faded bruise on her wrist, a reminder of Vincent Maxwell's ownership, the brutal man who owned not only the brothel but, as he constantly reminded her, owned her too. "Daydreaming costs me money," Maxwell's voice slithered from behind, causing Olivia to flinch. His heavy hand fell on her shoulder, fingers digging into her flesh through the thin fabric of her dress. "You've got customers waiting, and I don't pay you to stare out windows." "You don't pay me at all," Olivia whispered, immediately regretting her words when his grip tightened. Vincent Maxwell was 45, with a weathered face that might have once been handsome before greed and whiskey carved permanent lines into it. He leaned closer, his breath hot against her ear. "That's right. Everything you earn belongs to me. Everything you are belongs to me. Don't you forget that." Olivia nodded, eyes downcast, waiting for him to release her. When he finally did, she smoothed her dress, a garish red thing that made her feel exposed even when fully clothed, and headed toward the saloon area. The Scarlet Feather was the most profitable establishment in Chisholm Ranch, a mining town that had sprung up a decade earlier during a brief silver rush. When the mines started producing less, the town should have died, but it found new purpose as a stopping point for cattle drives and travelers heading west. The brothel thrived while decent businesses struggled. Olivia moved through the crowded room, dodging wandering hands and ignoring crude remarks. She had learned to disappear inside herself while remaining physically present, a survival skill acquired through necessity. "Hey there, pretty lady," a man slurred, reaching for her waist. "How about you and me?" "She's reserved," came a voice Olivia didn't recognize. She turned to see a tall man standing nearby. Unlike the unwashed miners and cowboys that usually populated the Scarlet Feather, this stranger stood out with his clean, though worn, clothing. His face was partially shadowed by his hat, but she could make out a strong jaw lined with stubble and eyes that seemed to look through rather than at her. "Says who?" the drunk demanded, swaying slightly. "Says me." The stranger's voice remained level, but something in his tone made the drunk reconsider his position. With a muttered curse, the man retreated to the bar, and Olivia found herself facing the stranger. "I'm not reserved," she said quietly. "And if Maxwell sees paying customers being turned away, he'll—" "Samuel Jackson," the man interrupted, tipping his hat slightly. "Just arrived in town." "Olivia," she replied, omitting her surname as she always did with customers. "Mr. Jackson, I appreciate the gesture, but you don't understand how things work here." His eyes, blue, she now noticed, studied her face. "Perhaps not, but I understand enough." Before she could respond, Maxwell materialized beside them, his false smile barely concealing his irritation. "I see you've met one of our finest girls. Olivia's quite popular." Samuel Jackson sized up Maxwell, and Olivia sensed an immediate tension between the men. "I was just telling the lady I'd like to purchase her time for the evening." Maxwell's eyebrows shot up and his smile widened. "Well now, that would be quite expensive, Mr. Jackson. Samuel Jackson, Mr. Jackson." "A whole evening with Olivia would cost you $20, Samuel stated, pulling out a small leather pouch. Maxwell's eyes gleamed at the sum more than most men in town earned in 2 weeks. "For that price, you get her until sunrise." Olivia stood silently, accustomed to being discussed as merchandise. When Maxwell nodded toward the stairs, she turned to lead the way, her heart heavy with the familiar burden of her existence. Once inside her small room, a space barely large enough for a bed, washstand, and trunk for her few belongings, Olivia began the routine she had performed hundreds of times. She reached for the buttons at the back of her dress, but Samuel's voice stopped her. "That won't be necessary." She turned, confused. Men didn't pay for conversation, especially not in Chisholm Ranch. "I don't understand." Samuel removed his hat, revealing sun-lightened brown hair that fell just above his collar. I'm not here for what you think, Miss Thornton. The use of her full name startled her. I've been looking for you. He sat on the room's only chair, keeping a respectful distance. At the request of your Aunt Margaret Thornton, she lives in Santa Fe now, Aunt Margaret. A name Olivia hadn't heard in years, not since before her parents died and she had been forced to make her way alone. My aunt is alive, Samuel nodded. Very much so. She's been searching for you since your parents' passing. It took some time to track you here. Hope flared briefly in Olivia's chest before reality doused it. It doesn't matter. I can't leave. I owe Maxwell money more than I could ever repay. Samuel's expression hardened. Debt bondage, a common tactic among men like Maxwell. He keeps records. Says I still owe him over $300 for my room, board, and the clothes he provides. Olivia gestured hopelessly around the sparse room, plus interest. A fabricated debt, I'm sure. Samuel leaned forward. Miss Thornton, your aunt has authorized me to negotiate your release by whatever means necessary. Olivia shook her head. You don't know Maxwell. He won't let me go, not for any amount. I'm one of his investments. She nearly choked on the word. Everyone has a price, Samuel replied, his voice steady, even men like Vincent Maxwell. For the first time in years, Olivia felt something dangerous stir within her. Hope. She quickly suppressed it. Hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. Why would my aunt send you? Why not come herself? She's elderly now and the journey would be difficult. I was heading this way on other business. He paused. I'm an agent with the Pinkerton Detective Agency. Your aunt hired our services to locate you. A Pinkerton. Olivia had heard of them, private detectives who worked for wealthy clients, tracking down missing persons or investigating crimes. So this is just a job to you. Something flashed in Samuel's eyes. Finding missing persons is my job, yes, but how I go about it is my choice. He stood, placing his hat back on. For tonight, I've bought you a reprieve. Get some rest. Tomorrow I'll speak with Maxwell. He won't listen. Then I'll make him listen. Samuel moved toward the door, then paused. Lock this behind me. I'll be downstairs until closing, making sure no one disturbs you. After he left, Olivia turned the key in the lock, a rare privacy she was seldom afforded. She sat on the edge of her bed, mind racing with possibilities she dared not fully consider. Samuel Jackson was either her salvation or another cruel disappointment in a life that had offered little else. Either way, tomorrow would bring an answer. Morning came too quickly. Olivia had slept better than she had in years, knowing her door was securely locked and that a Pinkerton agent was watching over her safety. She dressed in her plainest dress, a faded blue cotton with too many men's, and prepared to face whatever the day would bring. When she descended the stairs, the saloon was quiet, with only a few early patrons nursing their drinks. Samuel sat at a corner table, a cup of coffee before him, watching the room with the keen attention of a man accustomed to observing his surroundings. He stood when he saw her. Miss Thornton, he greeted her, gesturing to the chair across from him. I hope you slept well. Better than usual, she admitted, sitting down cautiously. Public conversation with a man that didn't involve flirtation or business negotiation felt foreign to her. A barmaid brought coffee for Olivia without being asked, eyeing Samuel curiously before retreating. News traveled fast in brothels, and everyone knew Samuel had paid for Olivia's time but had not claimed what he'd purchased. Maxwell will be down soon, Samuel said quietly. I've asked around about him this morning. He's well connected in town with the sheriff in his pocket. Olivia nodded. The sheriff dines here twice weekly without paying. Maxwell ensures his cooperation with free food, whiskey, and occasionally other services. Samuel's jaw tightened. I suspected as much. That complicates matters but doesn't change my intention. He reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a folded paper. This is from your aunt. Olivia took the paper with trembling fingers. She unfolded it to reveal neat, familiar handwriting. My dearest Olivia, if you are reading this, then Mr. Jackson has found you at last. I have never stopped searching for you since learning of your parents' tragedy. Please know that you have a home with me and the means to start a new life. Trust Mr. Jackson. He is a man of honor and has my complete confidence. With deepest love, your Aunt Margaret. Tears blurred Olivia's vision. She carefully refolded the letter, pressing it between her palms as though it might disappear. She's prepared a room for you, Samuel said gently. She has connections in Santa Fe. You could have a fresh start. The sound of boots on the stairs interrupted their conversation. Vincent Maxwell descended, already dressed in his usual attire of an expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the coarseness beneath. His eyes narrowed when he spotted Olivia with Samuel. "Well now," Maxwell said, approaching their table, "isn't this cozy? Enjoying your purchase, Mr. Jackson?" Samuel remained seated, his posture relaxed but alert. "Miss Thornton and I were just discussing her departure from your establishment." Maxwell's false smile vanished. "Is that so?" He turned to Olivia, his expression darkening. "You planning on leaving without settling your debts, girl?" Before Olivia could respond, Samuel interjected, "I'd like to see these alleged debts, Mr. Maxwell. Perhaps we can come to an arrangement." A tense silence followed as Maxwell assessed Samuel. Finally, he gave a curt nod. "My office. Now." He turned without waiting for a response and headed toward a door behind the bar. Samuel stood, offering his hand to help Olivia rise, a simple courtesy she had almost forgotten existed. "Stay close," he murmured as they followed Maxwell. The office was dimly lit, with a large desk dominated by ledgers and a strongbox. A gun rack on the wall displayed several expensive firearms, and the shelves held more whiskey bottles than books. Maxwell took his seat behind the desk, gesturing casually to two chairs opposite him. "So you want to buy out Olivia's contract," Maxwell began, pulling a ledger toward him and flipping through the pages. "As I'm sure she's told you, her debt is substantial." "I'd like to see the accounting," Samuel said evenly. Maxwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course." He turned the ledger around. Room and board for 3 years at $2 a week. Clothing, cosmetics, medical treatment when she caught that fever last winter. And of course, the initial $50 I paid to the stagecoach driver who found her half-starved in El Paso. Olivia flinched at the mention of that time, her lowest point, when desperation had led her to accept Maxwell's seemingly generous offer of employment as a hostess. Samuel studied the ledger, his expression unchanging. "According to your records, Miss Thornton owes you $482. Yet she says you quoted her $300 just yesterday." Maxwell shrugged. "Interest accrues daily." "At what rate?" "Whatever rate I set," Maxwell snapped, his facade of civility slipping. "This is my establishment and these are my rules." Samuel closed the ledger. "Mr. Maxwell, I'm prepared to offer you $250 for Miss Thornton's immediate release from any alleged debts." Maxwell laughed, the sound harsh in the small room. "Not enough, not nearly enough for my most popular girl. 300 then. Cash." Samuel reached into his coat. Maxwell leaned back in his chair, a calculating look in his eyes. "You seem mighty invested in this one, Jackson. Makes me wonder why. Perhaps I should raise the price, seeing as she's in such demand." 400, Samuel countered, "and we conclude our business today." A tense silence fell as Maxwell considered the offer. Olivia held her breath, afraid to hope yet unable to stop herself. 500, Maxwell finally said. "Not a penny less, and I want to see the money now." Samuel withdrew a thick envelope from his coat. "I came prepared for negotiation, Mr. Maxwell. 450 is all I carry." Maxwell eyed the envelope greedily. "Let me count it first." As Maxwell counted the bills, Samuel glanced at Olivia, giving her a reassuring nod. She sat perfectly still, hardly daring to believe this moment was real. "It's all here," Maxwell confirmed, tucking the money into his desk drawer. "Well, Miss Thornton, it appears you've found yourself a generous benefactor." His smile turned cruel. "Though I wonder what services he'll expect in return for such generosity." Samuel stood abruptly. "I'll need a signed receipt stating that Miss Thornton is free of all debts and obligations to you or this establishment." Maxwell's eyes narrowed, but he pulled out a sheet of paper. "You Pinkertons always insist on paperwork, don't you?" Samuel showed no surprise at being identified. "It's a matter of proper business." After Maxwell scrawled out a receipt and signed it with a flourish, he pushed it across the desk. "There, she's all yours." Though I'd watch your back if I were you, Jackson. Women like her don't know how to be grateful. Samuel took the receipt, carefully folding it into his vest pocket. Miss Thornton, please gather whatever belongings you wish to take. We'll be leaving immediately. Olivia stood on unsteady legs, still not fully comprehending her sudden freedom. I don't have much, it won't take long. One more thing, Maxwell called as they reached the door. The clothes on her back are mine, she'll need to leave them behind. Olivia went pale. But I don't have anything else. That's not happening, Samuel interrupted, his voice like steel. The receipt states all debts are cleared. You've been paid in full. Maxwell's hand moved toward his desk drawer where Olivia knew he kept a pistol. The girl came here with nothing but the rags on her back. Everything she wears, I provided. In a movement so swift Olivia barely registered it, Samuel had drawn his own weapon, a Colt revolver that now pointed steadily at Maxwell. The receipt, Mr. Maxwell, all debts paid in full. Maxwell's hand froze. You're making a mistake, Pinkerton. The only mistake would be forcing me to explain to the territorial governor why I had to shoot a brothel keeper in self-defense. Samuel's voice remained calm, but his eyes had turned cold. Governor Axtell takes a particular interest in Pinkerton reports. At the mention of the governor, Maxwell's expression changed. He slowly raised his hands from the desk. Take her and get out, but don't think this is finished. It is finished, Samuel replied. And to ensure it stays that way, I'll leave copies of your ledger with its interesting accounting practices with several officials should anything unfortunate happen to either of us. Maxwell's face contorted with fury, but he remained seated as Samuel backed toward the door, keeping his weapon trained on the brothel owner. Go pack your things, he told Olivia without taking his eyes off Maxwell. Quickly. Olivia hurried to her room, her heart pounding. She pulled her small carpet bag from beneath the bed and filled it with the few items she truly considered hers, a hair brush that had belonged to her mother, a small book of poetry gifted by a kind customer, a sturdy shawl, and the hidden coins she'd managed to secrete away over the years. Everything else in the room, the gaudy dresses, the cheap jewelry, the cosmetics, belonged to the life she was leaving behind. When she returned downstairs, Samuel was waiting by the front door, his posture vigilant. The few morning patrons watched curiously but kept their distance. Word of confrontation with Maxwell had clearly spread. Ready? Samuel asked when he saw her. Olivia nodded, clutching her meager bag. Yes. As they stepped onto the boardwalk, the morning sun momentarily blinded her. She had rarely been outside during daylight hours in the past 3 years. The sensation of sunlight on her face felt foreign yet wonderful. Samuel guided her toward the livery stable at the end of the street. I have horses waiting. We should leave town immediately. Where are we going? Olivia asked, struggling to keep pace with his long strides. First to the general store for proper traveling clothes for you, then we head to Santa Fe. He glanced back at the scarlet feather. Maxwell won't let this go easily. The farther we get from Chisholm Ranch today, the better. As they approached the general store, Samuel slowed his pace. Miss Thornton, I want to be clear about something. Olivia looked up at him questioningly. You're not my property, he said firmly. The money I paid was to clear a fraudulent debt, not to purchase you. You belong to yourself alone. If at any point you wish to go your own way rather than to your aunt's, that's your choice to make. Olivia stopped walking, stunned by his words. In 3 years, no man had spoken to her as a person with the right to make her own decisions. Why would you say that? Samuel's expression softened slightly. Because I suspect it's something you needed to hear. Their eyes met, and for the first time in years, Olivia felt something other than fear or resignation when looking at a man. Before she could respond, the general store's door opened as a customer exited, breaking the moment. Let's get what you need, Samuel said, gesturing toward the store. We have a long ride ahead. Inside, the storekeeper's wife helped Olivia select practical riding clothes, a spare dress, and other necessities. The woman's kindness, though cautious, was another reminder of the normal interactions Olivia had been denied for so long. Samuel paid without comment, then stepped outside to give Olivia privacy to change in the store's back room. when she emerged in a sturdy brown riding skirt and white shirtwaist, with her hair simply tied back. Samuel's expression remained neutral, but his eyes showed approval. "Better for traveling," he said simply. "The horses are this way." At the livery, 2 horses waited, a sturdy chestnut gelding and a smaller bay mare. Samuel checked the saddles and packs before helping Olivia mount. "It's been years since I've ridden," she admitted nervously, taking the reins. "Sadie's gentle," Samuel assured her, patting the mare's neck. "She'll follow my horse without much guidance. We'll take it slow at first." As they rode out of Chisholm Ranch, Olivia couldn't help looking back at the scarlet feather. She saw Maxwell standing on the porch, watching them leave. Even at a distance, his stance communicated fury. "Don't look back," Samuel advised. "That life is behind you now." Olivia turned forward, focusing on the trail ahead and the rhythmic movement of the horse beneath her. With each step away from town, the tight band around her chest seemed to loosen slightly. They rode steadily throughout the morning, following a trail that wound through rolling hills dotted with juniper and pinyon pine. The October air was crisp but not cold, perfect for traveling. Samuel set a pace that was cautious enough for Olivia's limited riding experience, but still put good distance between them and Chisholm Ranch. Around midday, they stopped near a small creek to rest the horses and eat the provisions. Samuel had packed jerky, hard biscuits, and dried apples. Olivia sat on a sun-warmed rock, stretching her sore muscles while watching Samuel check the horses. "How far is Santa Fe?" she asked when he joined her. "About 4 days' ride at this pace," he replied, offering her his canteen. "We'll stop at trading post I know tonight. The owner's a friend." Olivia drank gratefully. "You said you were heading this way on other business. What brings you to New Mexico territory?" Samuel considered her question before answering. "I was tracking a man wanted for bank robbery in Colorado, followed him to Santa Fe, where I encountered your aunt. After completing that assignment, I agreed to find you. And did you find the bank robber?" A brief smile touched his lips. "I always complete my assignments, Miss Thornton." Something in his tone made her believe him completely. "Please call me Olivia." "After what you've done for me, Miss Thornton seems too formal," he nodded. "Olivia, then." He looked up at the sun's position. "We should continue if we want to reach the trading post by nightfall." As they resumed their journey, Olivia found herself studying Samuel when she thought he wasn't looking. He rode with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to long hours in the saddle. Though lean, his shoulders were broad, and she had glimpsed the strength in his arms when he helped her mount. His face, partially shadowed by his hat, showed lines of experience rather than age. She guessed he was perhaps 30, though the life of a Pinkerton detective likely aged a man prematurely. More intriguing than his physical presence was the quiet dignity with which he conducted himself. He hadn't once looked at her the way men at the Scarlet Feather did, as though assessing merchandise. Instead, he treated her with a respect she had almost forgotten she deserved. As the afternoon progressed, Olivia became more comfortable in the saddle, and Samuel increased their pace slightly. They traveled through increasingly rugged terrain, the trail winding around mesas and through shallow canyons. The landscape's beauty, so different from the dusty confines of Chisholm Ranch, momentarily distracted Olivia from her worries about Maxwell's potential pursuit. Late afternoon brought a change in the weather. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon and a cool wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain. "Storm coming," Samuel observed, glancing skyward. "We need to push harder if we want to reach shelter before it hits." They urged the horses to a faster trot, but the storm moved quicker than anticipated. Within an hour, fat raindrops began to fall, quickly increasing to a steady downpour. Samuel led them off the main trail to where a cluster of large boulders and overhanging rock provided partial shelter. "We'll wait it out here," he shouted over the rain as they dismounted. "The trading post is still 2 hours ahead." Huddled beneath the rocky overhang, they watched the rain transform the landscape into streams and puddles. Despite her damp clothes, Olivia felt an unexpected exhilaration. The rain was washing away Chisholm Ranch, cleansing her of the life she'd left behind. Samuel removed his coat and offered it to her. "You're shivering." I'm fine, she insisted, but her trembling betrayed her. Please take it, he said, draping it around her shoulders without waiting for further argument. The coat was warm from his body and smelled of leather, tobacco, and something uniquely masculine that wasn't unpleasant. Olivia pulled it tighter around herself, murmuring thanks. They stood in silence for a while, watching the storm. Finally, Samuel spoke. Your aunt told me some of your history, that your parents died in a fire when you were 19. Olivia nodded, the memory still painful despite the passage of time. Our farm near Albuquerque. I wasn't home when it happened by the time I returned. Her voice faltered. I'm sorry, Samuel said quietly. What happened after, I tried to make it on my own. Worked as a seamstress, then as a waitress in a cafe. But the cafe owner's wife became jealous of her husband's attention toward me, though I'd done nothing to encourage it. She sighed. After losing that position, I headed south, thinking I might find work in El Paso. That's where Maxwell found me. He recognized desperation when he saw it, Samuel observed grimly. Men like him prey on women in vulnerable situations. I was naive, Olivia admitted. He offered a job serving drinks, good pay, a place to stay. By the time I understood what kind of establishment the Scarlet Feather was, he claimed I owed him too much to leave. She looked down at her hands. At first, I only served drinks, but eventually— You don't need to explain, Samuel interrupted gently. What matters is that chapter of your life is over. Olivia looked up at him, studying his face for judgment but finding none. Why did you really come for me, Mr. Jackson? Surely the Pinkertons have more important cases than tracking down a missing niece. Samuel was quiet for a moment, watching the rain. When your aunt showed me your photograph and told me her niece might be trapped in a life she didn't choose, I recognized something. He paused. My sister disappeared when she was 17. We later learned she'd been forced into a similar situation in a mining town in Montana by the time we found her. He didn't finish the sentence, but Olivia understood. I'm sorry, she said softly. It was a long time ago. His voice was flat, but the pain in his eyes was evident. When I became a Pinkerton, I made a promise to myself that I would help others in similar situations whenever possible. The rain began to slacken, and Samuel stepped out from under their shelter to check the sky. The worst has passed. We should continue if we want to reach the trading post before full dark. They rode through the drizzling aftermath of the storm, the desert landscape transformed by the rain. Water pooled in rock depressions and streamed down arroyos that had been dry for months. The air smelled of wet earth and sage. As the sun began to set, they crested a hill, and Samuel pointed to a cluster of buildings in the distance. Carson's trading post. We'll find hot food and dry beds there. The trading post was larger than Olivia had imagined, a main building constructed of adobe and logs, with several outbuildings including a stable and what appeared to be guest quarters. Lanterns glowed in the windows, a welcoming sight as dusk settled over the land. As they approached, a tall, gray-haired man emerged from the main building, rifle in hand. When he recognized Samuel, he lowered the weapon with a grin. Samuel Jackson, didn't expect to see you back so soon. His eyes moved to Olivia with obvious curiosity. Samuel dismounted, then helped Olivia down from her horse. Frank Carson, this is Miss Olivia Thornton. We're traveling to Santa Fe and need lodging for the night. Carson nodded, his assessment of Olivia brief but perceptive. Whatever he concluded about her situation, he kept to himself. Got room for you both. Sarah'll be pleased to have another woman to talk to. She's inside with supper nearly ready. A stable boy appeared to take their horses, and Carson led them into the main building, a spacious room that served as both trading post and dining area. A plump, pleasant-faced woman with silver-streaked black hair was setting a large table. Samuel, she exclaimed warmly. And you've brought company. Let me guess this is Margaret Thornton's niece. Olivia's surprise must have shown on her face because Sarah laughed. News travels fast, even out here. Margaret wrote that Samuel was searching for you. She approached Olivia, taking her hands. You poor dear, you're soaked through. Come with me and we'll find you some dry clothes before supper. Olivia glanced uncertainly at Samuel, who nodded encouragingly. Go ahead, I need to speak with Frank anyway. Sarah led Olivia to a small but comfortable bedroom in one of the outbuildings. You can stay here tonight. The washroom's just down the hall if you want to clean up before supper. She pulled a simple blue dress from a trunk. This might fit you well enough for tonight. Tomorrow we can properly wash and dry your traveling clothes. Left alone, Olivia gratefully changed into the borrowed dress. It was a bit loose but infinitely better than her damp clothing. She found a brush on the small dressing table and worked it through her tangled hair, wincing at the accumulated knots from the day's ride. As she prepared for supper, Olivia tried to process the day's events. That morning, she had awakened in the Scarlet Feather, property of Vincent Maxwell. Now she was free, traveling to an aunt she hadn't seen in years, in the company of a man who treated her with respect rather than as a commodity. It seemed too good to be true, and experience had taught Olivia to distrust good fortune. Yet Samuel Jackson had fulfilled every promise so far. Perhaps, just perhaps, her luck had finally changed. When she entered the main room, Samuel was seated at the table with Frank Carson, deep in conversation that stopped when they noticed her. Samuel stood as she approached, a gesture of courtesy she was still unaccustomed to receiving. "Better?" he asked, noting her dry clothes and brushed hair. "Much, thank you." She took the seat he indicated beside his own. Sarah brought out a hearty meal of venison stew, cornbread, and fresh vegetables from her garden. After years of irregular meals at the Scarlet Feather, the abundance of food was overwhelming to Olivia. She ate slowly, savoring each bite while listening to the conversation around her. Frank was updating Samuel on local news cattle rustlers operating near the territorial border, a new silver strike that probably wouldn't amount to much, and political tensions in Santa Fe. "Governor Axtell's causing quite a stir," Frank remarked. "Some say he's too friendly with the Santa Fe ring." Samuel nodded. "That's the word in Colorado too. Corruption's becoming an issue throughout the territory." "Speaking of trouble," Frank lowered his voice, "heard anything more about that business in Chisholm Ranch?" Samuel's eyes flicked briefly to Olivia. "What business is that?" "Word is Vincent Maxwell's got the sheriff and half the town in his pocket, running women, gambling, maybe worse." Frank shook his head. "Someone ought to clean up that place." "Perhaps someone will," Samuel replied evenly. After supper, Sarah insisted on showing Olivia her vegetable garden and small orchard, proudly pointing out trees that produced apples and peaches despite the harsh climate. Olivia listened attentively, grateful for conversation that didn't revolve around men or services rendered. When they returned to the main building, they found Samuel and Frank examining a map spread across a table. "Santa Fe's 4 days normal travel," Frank was saying, "but if Maxwell's likely to send men after you, I'd suggest this route." He traced a line across the map. "It's rougher terrain but less traveled. Adds a day to the journey but decreases your chances of unwanted encounters." Samuel nodded thoughtfully. "Good advice, we'll leave at first light." Later, as Olivia prepared for bed in her small room, a soft knock came at her door. She opened it to find Samuel standing in the hallway, keeping a respectful distance. "I wanted to check that you have everything you need," he said. "Yes, thank you. Mrs. Carson has been very kind," Samuel nodded. "Frank's going to have one of his men ride with us for the first day." "Extra precaution." Olivia hesitated, then asked the question that had been troubling her since leaving Chisholm Ranch. "Do you truly believe Maxwell will come after us?" "Men like Maxwell don't accept defeat easily," Samuel replied honestly. "But we have a good head start, and Frank's alternative route will help ensure we reach Santa Fe safely." His confidence was reassuring, but Olivia still felt a flutter of anxiety. "I've caused you considerable trouble." "You haven't caused anything, Olivia. The trouble comes from men who treat people as property." His expression softened slightly. "Try to rest. Tomorrow will be another long day of riding." After he left, Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, contemplating her situation. Samuel Jackson was unlike any man she had encountered in years, perhaps ever. His treatment of her as a person deserving of respect and agency was both unfamiliar and deeply moving. Yet she sensed layers to him that remained hidden. The brief mention of his sister revealed a personal motivation behind his professional facade, but she suspected there was more to his story than he had shared. As she finally lay down to sleep, Olivia realized that for the first time in 3 years, she was looking forward to tomorrow rather than dreading it. Dawn arrived with clear skies and a cool breeze, perfect weather for travel. Olivia woke early, feeling surprisingly rested despite the unfamiliar surroundings. She dressed quickly in her now dry traveling clothes and joined the others for a breakfast of eggs, bacon, and biscuits. Frank's man, introduced as Tom Wilkins, was already at the table, a weathered, taciturn individual who seemed more comfortable with horses than conversation. He acknowledged Olivia with a polite nod, but addressed most of his limited remarks to Samuel. "Packed enough provisions for 3 days," he reported. "Extra ammunition too, just in case." Samuel nodded approvingly. "Good, we'll leave as soon as we've eaten." As they prepared to depart, Sarah pulled Olivia aside, pressing a small bundle into her hands. "Some things a woman might need on the trail," she explained with a kind smile, "and a few treats too." Touched by the unexpected kindness, Olivia thanked her sincerely. "I wish we could stay longer." "You'll come back someday," Sarah said confidently, "under better circumstances." Frank joined them, handing a folded paper to Samuel. "Map of the route I showed you, marked the water sources and good camping spots." With final farewells exchanged, they mounted their horses and set off, Tom Wilkins leading the way. The alternative route took them immediately away from the main trail, winding through rocky terrain that would have been challenging to navigate without a guide. As they rode, Olivia found herself increasingly comfortable in the saddle. The mare responded well to her guidance, and she began to enjoy the physical sensation of riding, the rhythm of hoofbeats, the shifting of muscles beneath her, the connection between rider and horse. Samuel rode beside her when the trail permitted, occasionally pointing out interesting features of the landscape or identifying distant landmarks. His knowledge of the territory impressed her. "You know this land well for a detective from the East," she observed during a brief rest stop. "I've spent the last 5 years working throughout the Western Territories," he explained. "Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, you learn the land or you don't survive long, and before that," a shadow passed over his features, "I was a Union cavalry officer during the war. Afterward, I drifted west like many others, looking for a fresh start, and found it with the Pinkertons," he nodded. "They value men who can operate independently in difficult environments. The work suits me." "It seems a lonely profession," Olivia ventured. Samuel mounted his horse, signaling an end to the conversation. "We should continue." They rode in companionable silence for several hours, the landscape gradually changing as they climbed in elevation. Juniper and pinyon gave way to ponderosa pine, and the air grew cooler. By mid-afternoon, they had reached a high plateau offering spectacular views of the surrounding mountains. Tom Wilkins indicated a stand of trees near a small stream. "Good place to make camp for the night, water for the horses, shelter from the wind, and good visibility in all directions." Samuel agreed, and they set about establishing their camp. Wilkins proved extremely efficient, quickly gathering firewood and preparing a fire pit while Samuel tended to the horses. Olivia, determined to contribute, unpacked provisions and arranged their bedrolls in a semicircle around the future fire. As dusk approached, a simple meal of beans, jerky, and hardtack was prepared over the campfire. The food was basic but satisfying after a day of hard riding. They ate mostly in silence, the crackling fire and distant call of night birds providing a natural soundtrack to their meal. After eating, Tom Wilkins volunteered for the first watch, positioning himself on a rocky outcrop that provided a clear view of the surrounding terrain. Samuel remained by the fire with Olivia, adding occasional branches to maintain the flames. "Your aunt will be pleased to see you," he said, breaking the comfortable silence. "She spoke often of her memories of you as a child." Olivia stared into the fire, memories surfacing. "I barely remember her. She visited us maybe twice when I was young. My father, her brother, had some disagreement with her husband, I think." Family complications, Samuel observed. She regrets the lost years. When she learned of your parents' deaths, she tried to find you immediately, but you had already left the area. I couldn't stay, Olivia admitted. The farm was gone, and with it everything I'd known. I thought I could make my own way. She laughed bitterly. Such foolish confidence. Not foolish, Samuel countered. Brave, you survived, Olivia, many wouldn't have. His words warmed her more than the fire. What will happen when we reach Santa Fe? Will you simply deliver me to my aunt and move on to your next assignment? Samuel prodded the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling upward. That was the arrangement, yes. Something in his tone made Olivia look at him more closely, and now he met her gaze briefly before looking back at the fire. I find myself reluctant to consider this assignment merely completed. The admission, small as it was, sent a flutter through Olivia's chest. Before she could respond, Tom Wilkins returned to the fire. All quiet out there, he reported, but we should keep watches through the night. I'll take first, then wake you in 4 hours, Jackson, Samuel nodded, rising to his feet. Get some sleep, Olivia. Tomorrow's terrain will be more challenging. Olivia retired to her bedroll, pulling the blankets close against the night chill. Despite the hard ground beneath her and the unfamiliar sounds of the wilderness, she fell asleep quickly, lulled by the knowledge that both Samuel and Wilkins were keeping watch. Her dreams were troubled Vincent Maxwell pursuing her through endless corridors of the Scarlet Feather, always just a step behind. She woke with a start sometime in the night to find Samuel sitting nearby, his silhouette outlined against the dying fire. His presence immediately calmed her racing heart, and she drifted back to sleep, feeling inexplicably safe. Morning brought a layer of frost that glittered on the surrounding vegetation. Olivia woke to find Tom Wilkins already preparing coffee over a rekindled fire, while Samuel returned from checking the perimeter of their camp. All clear, he reported, accepting a cup of coffee from Wilkins. But we should move out soon. They ate a quick breakfast and packed efficiently, mounting their horses as the sun crested the eastern mountains. The day's journey took them through increasingly rugged country steep switchbacks that required careful navigation, narrow passages between towering rock formations, and shallow stream crossings that left their boots damp. By midday, they had descended into a beautiful valley where aspens displayed brilliant autumn colors against the dark green of surrounding pines. They paused there to rest the horses and eat a simple lunch. We're making good time, Wilkins observed, consulting Frank's map. Should reach the old mining camp by nightfall, abandoned now, but the cabins are still standing. Better shelter than another night under the stars. As they continued their journey that afternoon, Olivia found herself watching Samuel more frequently. There was something compelling about his quiet competence, the way he moved with purpose and remained vigilant without seeming tense. She noticed details she had overlooked before: the way the corners of his eyes crinkled slightly when he almost smiled, the careful gentleness of his hands when tending to his horse, the low timbre of his voice when he spoke. These observations confused her. After 3 years at the Scarlet Feather, Olivia had conditioned herself to view men with caution at best, suspicion at worst. Yet Samuel Jackson had earned her trust in ways she couldn't fully explain, even to herself. Late afternoon found them approaching the abandoned mining camp Wilkins had mentioned. It was nestled in a narrow canyon, a collection of weathered wooden structures that had once housed hopeful miners seeking their fortunes. Silver play petered out about 5 years back, Wilkins explained as they rode into the camp. Most moved on to new strikes, though a few old-timers might still work claims in the area. They selected the sturdiest-looking cabin for their shelter, a simple one-room structure with a stone fireplace and enough space for their bedrolls. While Samuel and Wilkins tended to the horses, Olivia swept decades of dust from the plank floor and cleared cobwebs from the corners. As night fell, they shared another simple meal around the cabin's hearth. The fire cast dancing shadows on the walls, creating an almost cozy atmosphere despite their rustic surroundings. "I'll head back to the trading post tomorrow," Wilkins announced as they finished eating. You're well off the main trails now. Another 2 days should see you to Santa Fe without trouble. Samuel nodded. Thank Frank for the assistance. I owe him one. He says you've owed him plenty over the years. Wilkins grinned, a rare expression on his weathered face. Man keeps a tally. Later, with Wilkins snoring softly near the fire, Olivia sat beside Samuel in the cabin's doorway, gazing at the star-filled sky. The night was cold but clear, the Milky Way a bright streak across the heavens. I'd forgotten how beautiful the stars could be, she said softly. In Chisholm Ranch, I rarely saw the night sky. Samuel glanced at her profile, illuminated by starlight. There's much beauty in this territory, despite its harshness. Yes, she agreed, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. I'd lost sight of that, lost sight of many things. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds, an owl's distant call, the rustling of small creatures in the underbrush, the occasional snapping of their fire. Samuel, Olivia began hesitantly, using his first name for the first time, what will you do after you've delivered me to my aunt? He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. I have another assignment waiting in Arizona territory, a land dispute that's turned violent. Always moving on to the next task, she observed. It's the nature of the work. Olivia gathered her courage. Have you ever considered a different nature of work, a more settled existence? Samuel turned to look at her directly, his expression unreadable in the dim light. Are you asking if I've considered staying in Santa Fe, Olivia? Her cheeks warmed, and she was grateful for the darkness that hid her blush. Perhaps I am. I've spent the years since the war avoiding attachments, he admitted. The Pinkerton work suits that preference. And before the war. Samuel sighed, looking back at the stars. Before the war, I was engaged to be married. Elizabeth was her name. She died of typhoid while I was fighting at Shiloh. His voice was steady but held an undercurrent of old pain. After that, and after losing my sister, it seemed easier to remain unattached. Olivia's heart ached for his losses. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. He stood, effectively ending the conversation. We should get some rest. Tom leaves at first light and we'll continue our journey. Olivia nodded, rising as well. As they turned to enter the cabin, their hands brushed accidentally. A jolt of awareness passed through her at the brief contact, and she saw Samuel's slight intake of breath that suggested he had felt it too. Neither acknowledged the moment as they prepared for sleep. But Olivia lay awake long after the men's breathing had steadied, contemplating the unexpected feelings developing within her. After years of viewing physical contact with men as merely transactional, the simple touch of Samuel's hand against hers had awakened something she thought long-dead desire mingled with genuine affection. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. She was damaged goods, a former prostitute with nothing to offer a man like Samuel Jackson. Yet she couldn't deny the growing attraction, nor the hope that perhaps he might see beyond her past to the woman she truly was. Morning arrived with a copper-colored sunrise that painted the canyon walls in brilliant hues. After a quick breakfast, Tom Wilkins prepared to depart. Stay alert, he advised as he mounted his horse. You're still in wild country. Bears and mountain lions are active this time of year. Samuel nodded, shaking the man's hand. Safe travels back to Frank's. They watched Wilkins ride away, then set about packing their own provisions for the continued journey. Without discussion, they fell into an efficient partnership, Samuel tending to the horses while Olivia secured their supplies. The day's ride took them deeper into the mountains, following game trails and ancient paths that predated European settlement of the territory. The elevation increased steadily, making breathing more labored for both riders and horses. They stopped frequently to rest the animals and consult Frank's map. We'll cross the ridge by midday, Samuel explained during one such stop, pointing to their position on the map. Then it's downhill to the Santa Fe River. We can follow it most of the way to the city. Olivia studied the map with interest. It seems we're taking a very roundabout route. Intentionally so. The main roads would be the first place Maxwell's men would look for us. The mention of Maxwell brought Olivia's anxiety rushing back. Do you truly believe he would send men this far? Samuel's expression grew serious. Men like Maxwell view people as possessions. You represented a significant investment to him, and I publicly challenged his authority. Yes, I believe he would pursue us if he could. Olivia shivered despite the warming day. I've brought danger to you. I accepted that possibility when I took the assignment. Samuel folded the map, tucking it into his saddlebag. Besides, I'm trained to handle such situations. It's why your aunt hired me specifically. They continued their journey, the trail growing steeper as they approached the ridge Samuel had indicated. The horses struggled in places, forcing them to dismount and lead the animals through particularly difficult sections. As they neared the ridge's summit, Samuel suddenly raised his hand in warning, signaling Olivia to stop. He cocked his head, listening intently, then quickly led both horses behind a large outcropping of rock. "What is it?" Olivia whispered, heart pounding. "Riders," Samuel replied quietly, drawing his rifle from its saddle holster. "Stay here with the horses." Before she could protest, he had moved to the edge of their cover, positioning himself to observe the trail below while remaining hidden. Olivia held the horses' reins tightly, trying to calm their nervous shifting. Minutes passed in tense silence before Samuel returned, his expression grim. 3 riders heading south on the main trail. Hard to be certain at this distance, but one matches the description of Maxwell's foreman, Jenkins. Olivia's blood ran cold. Jenkins was Maxwell's enforcer, a brutal man who handled problems at the Scarlet Feather with vicious efficiency. How could they have found us? They haven't, not yet. They're following the main route to Santa Fe, probably hoping to intercept us there. Samuel checked his watch. We need to move faster. If they reach Santa Fe before us, they could watch the roads into town. They mounted quickly and continued upward, pushing the horses harder than before. When they finally crested the ridge around noon, they were rewarded with a spectacular view. The vast expanse of the Rio Grande Valley spread before them, with distant mountains framing the horizon. Under different circumstances, Olivia would have paused to appreciate the breathtaking vista, but urgency drove them forward. The descent proved almost as challenging as the climb, with loose rocks and steep switchbacks requiring careful navigation. By late afternoon, they had reached the lower elevations where the vegetation grew thicker and water more abundant. They found the Santa Fe River, little more than a creek at this point in its course, and followed it eastward. "We'll camp here tonight," Samuel announced as they reached a small clearing near the river. "The horses need rest, and we should approach Santa Fe cautiously tomorrow." They established camp with practiced efficiency now, working together without needing to discuss each task. As darkness fell, Samuel built a smaller fire than usual, conscious of the potential for unwanted attention. Over a dinner of the last of their provisions, Samuel outlined his plan for the following day. "We'll approach Santa Fe from the west rather than the south. It's a longer route but less likely to be watched. I know a family on the outskirts who can provide information about any strangers in town before we enter." Olivia nodded, trusting his judgment. "How far is it to my aunt's home from there?" She lives on the north side of town. "A comfortable house with a walled garden." Samuel's expression softened slightly. "She's prepared a room for you, speaks of it often." The thought of her aunt waiting, hoping for her arrival, brought unexpected tears to Olivia's eyes. "It's still difficult to believe someone has been searching for me all this time." "She never gave up," Samuel confirmed. "Each time I returned to Santa Fe, she would ask for any news, any rumor that might lead to you." Olivia wiped away a tear. "And you found me in that horrible place." Samuel reached across the space between them, hesitating before gently touching her hand. "Where I found you doesn't define who you are, Olivia." The warmth of his touch and the sincerity in his voice overwhelmed her. Before she could respond, he withdrew his hand and stood. "I'll take first watch tonight. Try to get some sleep." As Olivia prepared her bedroll, she reflected on their journey, not just the physical distance traveled, but the emotional terrain she had crossed since leaving Chisholm Ranch. For the first time in years, she was beginning to see herself as more than Maxwell's property or a victim of circumstance. Samuel's treatment of her, his respect, his protection without possession had awakened a sense of self-worth she had thought forever lost. Even more confusing were the feelings developing for the man himself. Was it merely gratitude and admiration, or something deeper? And if it was something deeper, what could possibly come of it? Samuel had his life as a Pinkerton, and she was still carrying the shadows of the scarlet feather. These thoughts accompanied her into restless sleep, where her dreams mingled hope and fear in equal measure. Morning dawned crisp and clear, with wisps of fog rising from the river. They broke camp quickly, eager to reach Santa Fe. The terrain had moderated considerably, allowing for faster travel, and by mid-morning they could see distant smoke from the city's chimneys. As promised, Samuel led them to a small farm on the outskirts, a modest adobe structure surrounded by irrigated fields where an older Mexican man was working. The man straightened as they approached, recognition lighting his weathered face when he saw Samuel. "Senor Jackson, it has been many months." "Too many, Miguel." Samuel dismounted, clasping the man's hand warmly. "This is Miss Thornton. We're traveling to Santa Fe and could use some information before entering the city." Miguel's dark eyes assessed Olivia with polite curiosity as she dismounted. "My wife will prepare refreshment while we talk. Please come inside." The farmhouse was cool and inviting, with whitewashed walls and colorful woven rugs on the packed earth floor. Miguel's wife, Elena, a small woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked black hair, welcomed them warmly, immediately setting about preparing coffee and bringing out fresh tortillas. While Elena fussed over Olivia, exclaiming over her journey and insisting she eat, Samuel spoke quietly with Miguel in a mixture of English and Spanish. Olivia caught fragments about strangers in town and watching the roads. After their brief meal, Miguel accompanied them outside, where Samuel conferred with him over the map one final time. Elena pressed a bundle of food into Olivia's hands before embracing her. "Go with God, child," the older woman said warmly. "And perhaps next time you visit, it will be as Senor Jackson's wife." "Yes," Olivia blushed furiously. "We're not that, is he simply escorting me to my aunt's home?" Elena's eyes twinkled knowingly. "As you say, but I have eyes, child, and so does he when he looks at you." Before Olivia could formulate a response, Samuel called her name, indicating it was time to depart. She thanked Elena hastily and mounted her horse, her cheeks still warm with embarrassment. As they rode away, Samuel explained what he had learned. "Miguel's son works in town. He reports 3 strangers asking questions about a Pinkerton detective and a woman traveling together. They're staying at the Silver Dollar Hotel on the south side of town." Olivia's stomach tightened with anxiety. "Jenkins and his men," Samuel nodded grimly, "almost certainly. They're watching the main roads into town, but Miguel knows a back way through the old Spanish Quarter. We'll approach from that direction and go directly to your aunt's home." The outskirts of Santa Fe gradually gave way to more densely packed buildings as they entered the city proper. Following Miguel's directions, Samuel led them through narrow streets where adobe buildings cast deep shadows. The atmosphere was markedly different from Chisholm Ranch here. Spanish was spoken as frequently as English, and the architecture reflected centuries of settlement rather than hasty frontier construction. They avoided the central plaza, instead winding through residential areas until they reached a neighborhood of larger homes set back from the street behind adobe walls. Samuel reined his horse before an iron gate set into a pale yellow wall. "This is it," he said simply. "Your aunt's home." Olivia stared at the gate, suddenly overwhelmed by anxiety. What if her aunt was disappointed in her? What if she learned of Olivia's life at the Scarlet Feather and rejected her? The thoughts must have shown on her face because Samuel moved his horse closer to hers. "She will be overjoyed to see you," he said quietly. "Nothing in your past will change that." Drawing strength from his confidence, Olivia dismounted. Samuel did likewise, then pulled a cord that rang a bell inside the compound. Moments later, the gate was opened by a young Mexican woman in a neat black dress who gazed at them questioningly. "I'm Samuel Jackson," he explained. "Here to see Mrs. Thornton." The woman's eyes widened, and she quickly ushered them inside, taking the horses' reins and calling for a stable boy to tend to the animals. She led them along a stone path through a beautifully maintained garden to the main house, a gracious adobe structure with a covered porch running its length. Before they reached the steps, the front door opened, and an elderly woman emerged. Though stooped with age, her bearing remained dignified, and her face lined with years but still handsome showed the same delicate features Olivia recognized from her own mirror. Samuel. The woman called, her voice quavering slightly. "Is it truly?" "Yes, Margaret," Samuel replied. "I've found her." Margaret Thornton's gaze shifted to Olivia and her hands flew to her mouth. "Olivia, my dear child," Olivia couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She nodded, taking a hesitant step forward. With surprising speed for one her age, Margaret descended the steps and rushed to Olivia, enfolding her in a fierce embrace. "My dear girl," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My dear, dear girl, I thought I'd lost you forever." The dam of emotion Olivia had maintained throughout their journey suddenly burst. She clung to her aunt, tears flowing freely as years of pain, fear, and loneliness poured out. Margaret held her through the storm, murmuring comforting words and stroking her hair as one would a child. When Olivia finally composed herself enough to look up, she saw Samuel standing a respectful distance away, his expression a mixture of satisfaction and something deeper she couldn't quite identify. "Come inside, both of you," Margaret insisted, keeping an arm around Olivia's waist. "You must be exhausted from your journey." The interior of the house was as elegant as its exterior suggested, tasteful furnishings, fine carpets from the East, and artwork that reflected both European and native influences. Margaret led them to a comfortable sitting room where a servant quickly brought refreshments. "I can't believe you're really here," Margaret said, seated beside Olivia on a settee, her wrinkled hands clasping Olivia's younger ones. "When I received Samuel's telegram saying he had found you, I hardly dared hope." "Telegram?" Olivia looked questioningly at Samuel, who sat opposite them. "Sent from the trading post," he explained. "I wanted your aunt to be prepared for our arrival." Margaret turned to Samuel with obvious gratitude. "You've done what seemed impossible, my friend. How can I ever repay you?" "Seeing you reunited is payment enough," he replied simply. "Though I should warn you that Olivia's departure from Chisholm Ranch wasn't without complications. The men I mentioned in my telegram have followed us to Santa Fe." Margaret's expression hardened. "Vincent Maxwell. Samuel told me of your situation, dear," she explained to Olivia. "Not in detail, but enough that I understand what you've endured." Olivia looked down, ashamed despite knowing rationally that her circumstances hadn't been her fault. "I never wanted you to know." "Nonsense," Margaret interrupted firmly. "You survived, Olivia, that's what matters, and now you're home where you belong, home." The word resonated in Olivia's heart. Could this elegant house truly become her home? Could she leave behind the shadows of the scarlet feather and begin anew? As though reading her thoughts, Margaret squeezed her hands. "This is your home now, for as long as you wish it to be. No one can take that from you." Samuel cleared his throat softly. "If you'll excuse me, I should attend to some business in town. There are matters regarding Maxwell's men that require attention." Olivia looked up sharply. "You're leaving?" "Temporarily," he assured her. "There are officials in Santa Fe who should be informed about Maxwell's operations. With the right pressure, we can ensure he poses no further threat to you." Though his explanation made sense, Olivia felt a sudden panic at the thought of his departure. "Will you return?" Something flickered in Samuel's eyes, uncertainty, perhaps, or conflict. "Yes, we have matters to discuss once your safety is fully secured." Margaret observed this exchange with shrewd eyes but made no comment. "Of course, Samuel, you're always welcome in this house. Please be careful in town." After Samuel departed, Margaret insisted that Olivia rest and refresh herself. The housekeeper, Maria, showed her to a beautiful bedroom that had been prepared for her arrival, a spacious chamber with a 4-poster bed, dressing table, and large window overlooking the garden. "The bath is being prepared, señorita," Maria informed her, "and I have laid out clean clothes. The señora had them made for you." Left alone, Olivia explored the room that was now hers, marveling at its simple elegance. The wardrobe contained several dresses in modest but fashionable styles, all apparently new and sized for her. On the dressing table lay a silver-backed brush and mirror set, alongside small bottles of perfume and lotion. These small luxuries items she had been denied for years brought fresh tears to her eyes. The contrast between this room and her cramped quarters at the Scarlet Feather was overwhelming. After bathing and changing into a simple blue day dress, Olivia rejoined her aunt in the garden, where tea had been arranged beneath a flowering trellis. The afternoon passed in conversation as they began the process of reconnecting across the years of separation. Margaret shared stories of Olivia's father as a young man, filling in pieces of family history Olivia had never known. In turn, Olivia spoke cautiously of her life after her parents' deaths, omitting the most painful details of her time at the Scarlet Feather but not denying its reality. "You needn't protect me from the truth, dear," Margaret said gently when Olivia faltered. "I've lived long enough to understand the hardships women face in this world, especially those without family or fortune to shield them." "I'm ashamed," Olivia admitted, her voice barely audible. "Of what I became, of what I did to survive." Margaret reached across the table to take her hand. "Listen to me, Olivia. Shame belongs to those who exploited your vulnerability, not to you, never to you." Her aunt's unconditional acceptance was a balm to Olivia's wounded spirit. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that her past might not define her future. As evening approached with no sign of Samuel's return, Olivia's anxiety increased. Should he have been back by now? She asked as they prepared for dinner. Margaret considered the question. "Samuel is thorough in his work. It may take time to arrange meetings with the necessary officials." She studied Olivia's worried expression. "You care for him?" It wasn't a question, and Olivia didn't try to deny it. "He treated me as a person when everyone else saw only merchandise. He risked his life to free me from Maxwell." "Samuel is a good man," Margaret agreed, "but he carries his own burdens from the past. He told me something of his sister's fate when I first engaged his services." "He mentioned her briefly to me as well," Olivia said. "And a fiancé who died during the war," Margaret nodded sadly. "So much loss in a young life. It's shaped him into the man he is, honorable, protective of those in need, but guarded with his heart." They were interrupted by Maria announcing dinner. Throughout the meal, Olivia found her thoughts returning to Samuel, wondering where he was, if he was safe, whether he truly intended to return as promised. The answer came shortly after 9 o'clock, when the front gate bell rang. Maria hurried to answer it, returning moments later to the parlor where Olivia and Margaret were having tea. "Senor Jackson has returned," she announced. "Shall I show him in?" "Of course," Margaret replied, noting Olivia's immediate relief. Samuel entered the parlor looking weary but satisfied. He had clearly taken time to clean up before arriving, but a darkening bruise on his jaw suggested his business in town hadn't been entirely peaceful. "Samuel, what happened?" Olivia exclaimed, rising from her seat. He touched his jaw briefly. "A minor disagreement." "Nothing to concern yourselves with." Margaret gave him a skeptical look. "Please sit down and tell us what you've learned." Samuel accepted a cup of tea before sharing his news. "I met with Judge Bristol, who has jurisdiction over territorial matters. After hearing my evidence regarding Maxwell's operations in Chisholm Ranch, he's issued orders for an investigation." "That's wonderful news," Margaret said approvingly. "There's more," Samuel continued. "Jenkins and the other men Maxwell sent have been detained for questioning. They were carrying weapons in town without permits, a minor offense, but enough to hold them temporarily." Olivia's relief was palpable. "So it's over. Maxwell can't reach me here." Samuel's expression sobered. "Not entirely. The investigation will take time, and Maxwell has connections who might warn him. But you're safer here in Santa Fe with people who know to protect you than you were on the trail. You'll stay with us until this is fully resolved, of course," Margaret stated firmly. "I insist." "The guest room is already prepared." Samuel hesitated. I wouldn't want to impose nonsense, Margaret interrupted. It's the sensible arrangement for Olivia's security, unless you have other pressing assignments, no immediate ones, he admitted. The Arizona matter can wait a few days. Olivia tried to hide her pleasure at this development, but the slight blush that colored her cheeks didn't escape Margaret's notice. The older woman smiled knowingly before rising from her seat. Well, that's settled then. If you'll excuse me, I find I'm quite tired after all the excitement of today. Olivia, perhaps you could show Samuel to the guest room. Maria will have prepared it by now. With that transparent excuse, Margaret bid them good night and departed, leaving Olivia and Samuel alone in the parlor. An awkward silence fell between them. Your aunt is a remarkable woman, Samuel finally said, setting down his teacup. Yes, Olivia agreed. I can see where my father got his strength of character. Another silence followed, broken when Samuel stood. I should let you rest. It's been a long journey for both of us. Samuel, Olivia began hesitantly, I haven't properly thanked you for everything you've done. No thanks are necessary. I was hired to find you and ensure your safe return to your aunt. I've simply fulfilled my contract. The formal response stung Olivia more than she expected. Is that all it was? A contract? Samuel looked away, his profile outlined by the lamplight. It began that way. And now, she pressed, gathering her courage, he turned to face her, his expression conflicted. Now I find myself in unfamiliar territory, Olivia. For years, I've moved from one assignment to the next, never staying long enough to form attachments. It was safer that way. And now it's not safe, she asked softly. No, he admitted. Now I find myself contemplating possibilities I've avoided since the war. It's disconcerting. Olivia took a step toward him. I understand disconcerting. My entire world has changed in the span of days. Everything I thought about myself, about my future, has been upended. For the better, I hope, Samuel said quietly. Yes, she whispered, but also frightening, to hope again after so long without it. Samuel reached out tentatively, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face. The gentle touch sent a shiver through Olivia that had nothing to do with fear. I should go, he said, his voice rougher than before. Good night, Olivia. Good night, Samuel. After he left, Olivia remained in the parlor for a long while, contemplating the confusing emotions swirling within her. For 3 years, she had suppressed all genuine feeling, protecting what remained of her heart behind walls of indifference. Now those walls were crumbling, leaving her vulnerable in ways that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. The following days established a new rhythm to Olivia's life. Mornings were spent with Margaret, learning about the household's operation and becoming acquainted with the servants. Afternoons often included excursions into town carefully planned, and always with Samuel as escort to purchase necessary items for Olivia's new life, or simply to enjoy Santa Fe's cultural offerings. Margaret proved to be not only a loving relative but a wise mentor, gently guiding Olivia's reintegration into respectable society without judgment or condescension. She introduced Olivia to select friends as her dear niece, recently arrived from the East, a fiction that spared Olivia the scrutiny her true background might have invited. Throughout these days, Samuel remained a constant presence, vigilant in his protection yet increasingly relaxed in their company. Olivia observed subtle changes in him, more frequent smiles, a willingness to share occasional stories from his travels, a growing ease with casual touch when helping her into carriages or navigating crowded streets. One afternoon, a week after their arrival, Samuel received a telegram that clearly contained significant news. He read it twice before joining Olivia and Margaret in the garden. Judge Bristol has expanded the investigation, he announced without preamble. Based on testimonies from Jenkins and several others, federal marshals have been dispatched to Chisholm Ranch with warrants for Maxwell's arrest. Olivia's hand trembled slightly as she set down her embroidery. On what charges? Multiple counts of fraud, illegal gambling operations, and Samuel hesitated, glancing at Margaret before continuing, and forced servitude, which is legally equivalent to slavery. If convicted, he'll face a substantial prison sentence. Margaret reached over to squeeze Olivia's hand. Justice at last. Will I need to testify? Olivia asked, dreading the prospect of facing Maxwell in court and having her past exposed to public scrutiny. Not necessarily, Samuel replied. The evidence from his own ledgers, combined with testimonies already secured, may be sufficient. Judge Bristol is aware of your situation and prefers to protect your privacy if possible. Relief washed over Olivia. Then it truly might be over soon. It appears so, Samuel agreed, though something in his tone suggested reservation. Margaret, ever perceptive, raised an eyebrow. But investigations and trials take time, particularly in the territories. It could be months before the matter is fully resolved. The implication hung in the air. Samuel's presence would not be required for months, yet his life as a Pinkerton detective demanded his attention elsewhere. Olivia felt a familiar anxiety rising at the thought of his departure. I see, Margaret said thoughtfully. And your assignment in Arizona awaits, I presume? Samuel nodded. I should depart within the week. The agency has been patient, but I've delayed too long already. How long will you be gone? Olivia asked, struggling to keep her voice neutral. The nature of the case makes it difficult to predict. Perhaps a month, possibly longer. A month or more. The prospect of such separation so soon after finding safety in Santa Fe filled Olivia with dread. Yet she had no claim on Samuel's time or attention beyond what his professional obligations dictated. Well, Margaret declared briskly, we shall simply have to manage without your protection, Samuel, though I must say your company will be greatly missed. Her emphasis on the word company rather than protection was subtle but clear. Margaret had observed the growing connection between Olivia and Samuel and was gently acknowledging it. Samuel's gaze shifted to Olivia. I've arranged for a reliable deputy marshal to maintain a presence in town during my absence. He'll check on you regularly. Thank you, Olivia replied softly. That's very thoughtful. An uncomfortable silence fell, broken only when Maria appeared to announce that a visitor had arrived for Margaret, a longtime friend whose weekly visits were a fixture in the household schedule. Excuse me, dears, Margaret said, rising from her chair. Mrs. Caldwell is a dear woman but terribly prone to gossip. It's best if I receive her alone. With a meaningful glance between Olivia and Samuel, she added, Perhaps you might show Samuel the improvements to the rose garden, Olivia. The new trellises are quite lovely. With that transparent excuse for privacy, Margaret departed, leaving them alone in the garden. For several moments neither spoke, the tension between them palpable. I apologize for not discussing my departure earlier, Samuel finally said. I received confirmation of the Arizona assignment only yesterday. You don't owe me explanations, Olivia replied, though her heart argued otherwise. Your work takes you where you're needed. Samuel studied her face. Is that what you believe, that I go only where duty calls? The question held layers of meaning Olivia wasn't sure she was ready to explore. Isn't that the nature of your profession? It has been, he acknowledged. For years, I've defined myself by my work, moving from place to place, assignment to assignment, avoiding any connection that might complicate matters. And now, Olivia asked, echoing their conversation from days earlier. Samuel took a step toward her. Now I find myself reluctant to leave Santa Fe, specifically to leave this house, to leave you. Olivia's heart quickened at his words. Then don't go. It's not that simple. Why not? She challenged, surprising herself with her boldness. What is holding you to a life of constant movement, Samuel? Is it truly devotion to your profession, or are you running from something else? The directness of her question clearly startled him. He turned away, gazing across the garden while gathering his thoughts. Perhaps both, he admitted finally. The work fulfills a purpose, bringing order to chaos, justice where it's lacking, but you're right that there's more. He faced her again, his expression open in a way she hadn't seen before. After losing Elizabeth, after failing to save my sister, stillness became unbearable. Movement, constant change of scenery and circumstance became a way to outrun grief. And has it worked? Olivia asked gently. Has the movement helped you escape the pain? Samuel smiled ruefully. You know the answer to that. Yes, she said. Just as I know that running from Chisholm Ranch didn't erase what happened there, it's still part of me, however much I might wish otherwise. You're stronger than you realize, Olivia, Samuel said, his voice warm with admiration. To survive what you did and still retain such capacity for compassion, it's remarkable. Not strength, she corrected him. Necessity, we adapt to survive, both of us, but at what cost? She took a deep breath before continuing. Samuel, I won't presume to tell you what your life should be. But I will tell you that these past days, seeing you relaxed at dinner, hearing you laugh with my aunt over her stories, watching you help the gardener with the new trellises, I've glimpsed a different man than the Pinkerton detective who found me at the Scarlet Feather. Samuel was silent, absorbing her words. When he finally spoke, his voice held a vulnerability she hadn't heard before. I've glimpsed him too, he confessed, and he terrifies me almost as much as he intrigues me. Why terrifies? Because he wants things I've denied myself for years. A home. Companionship. His eyes met hers directly. Love, the word hung between them, charged with possibility. Olivia's heart pounded so loudly she was certain he must hear it. I thought those things were lost to me forever, she said quietly. After Maxwell, after what I became in that place, I believed no decent man would ever. She trailed off, unable to complete the thought. Samuel closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. Olivia, listen to me. What happened at the Scarlet Feather was done to you, not by you. It doesn't diminish your worth in any way. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. How can you say that? How can you look at me and not see? I see a woman of extraordinary courage, he interrupted firmly. I see someone who endured circumstances that would have broken many, yet retained her essential self, her kindness, her intelligence, her capacity to trust again despite every reason not to. A tear slipped down Olivia's cheek. I'm afraid to believe you. Afraid to hope that someone like you could truly, she didn't finish the sentence, because Samuel had gently tilted her face upward and was looking at her with such tenderness that words failed her. Someone like me, he echoed softly, who has spent years running from his own ghosts. Someone who couldn't protect the women he loved most. Olivia, if anyone should question their worthiness, it's me, not you. The honesty of his confession broke something open in Olivia's heart. Without thinking, she reached up to touch his face, her fingers lightly tracing the fading bruise on his jaw. Perhaps, she suggested, her voice barely above a whisper, we're both more worthy than we believe. Samuel's hand covered hers, pressing it more firmly against his cheek. For a long moment, they stood frozen in that pose, each absorbing the reality of the other's touch. Then, with infinite gentleness, Samuel lowered his head and kissed her. The kiss was tentative at first, a question rather than a demand. Olivia had been kissed countless times at the Scarlet Feather, but never like this. Never with such reverence, as though she were something precious rather than a commodity. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. I should go to Arizona, he murmured. It's my responsibility. I know, Olivia replied, understanding his sense of duty even as she dreaded their separation. But I will return, Olivia. He drew back slightly to look into her eyes. Not just because of Maxwell or concern for your safety, but because what's beginning between us deserves the chance to grow. Hope bloomed in Olivia's chest, fragile but undeniable. I'll be here, she promised. The week that followed was bittersweet. Knowing Samuel's departure approached, Olivia treasured each moment of his company. They spent hours in conversation, sharing pieces of their histories that had previously remained unspoken. Samuel told her about his childhood in Pennsylvania, his education at West Point, the horrors he had witnessed during the war. Olivia spoke of her parents' farm, her dreams before their deaths, the slow erosion of her options that had eventually led her to Maxwell's false promises. These exchanges deepened their understanding of each other, creating a foundation of honesty that neither had experienced in a relationship before. Margaret observed their growing closeness with quiet approval, occasionally providing convenient reasons to leave them alone together. The evening before Samuel's scheduled departure, Margaret announced she had a headache and would retire early, pointedly suggesting that Olivia and Samuel might enjoy the parlor's privacy. Once alone, they sat side by side on the settee, the weight of impending separation hanging between them. "I've left detailed instructions with Deputy Marshal Collins," Samuel said, holding Olivia's hand between both of his. "He'll check on you daily until my return." "How long do you anticipate being in Arizona?" Olivia asked, dreading the answer. "The land dispute is complicated, multiple claims involving mining rights, water access, and territorial boundaries. It could take several weeks to sort through the evidence and reach a resolution. And after that," Olivia couldn't keep the hope from her voice. "Will you have other assignments waiting?" Samuel's expression grew serious. "That depends on decisions I need to make while I'm away." At her questioning look, he continued, "I've been considering my future with the Pinkertons, Olivia, the life of constant travel and danger. It served its purpose for a time, but I'm no longer certain it's what I want." Olivia's heart quickened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that finding you has changed something fundamental in me." His hands tightened around hers. "For the first time since the war, I'm thinking about possibilities beyond the next assignment. A more settled existence, perhaps, here in Santa Fe. Because of me?" she asked softly. "Because of what you've shown me, that there can be life after loss. That the past shapes us but doesn't have to define us." He smiled slightly. "Your courage in starting anew has inspired my own." Olivia leaned forward, resting her forehead against his shoulder. "I'll miss you terribly." Samuel's arms encircled her, drawing her closer. "And I you. But this separation is necessary, I think, for both of us." She looked up questioningly. "You need time to establish yourself here, to become comfortable in your new life without complications," he explained. "And I need time to ensure I'm making decisions for the right reasons, not merely responding to the moment's emotions." Though part of her wanted to protest, Olivia recognized the wisdom in his words. Their connection had developed rapidly under extraordinary circumstances. "Some perspective might indeed be valuable. Promise you'll write," she said instead. "Every week," he assured her. "And you'll reply?" "Every week," she echoed, smiling despite the ache in her heart. Samuel's expression softened as he gazed at her. "Olivia Thornton, you are the most remarkable woman I've ever known." Before she could respond, he kissed her more deeply than their first kiss in the garden, but still with a restraint that honored her boundaries. Olivia returned the kiss without hesitation, pouring into it all the feelings she couldn't yet fully express in words. When they finally parted, Samuel tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with gentle fingers. "I should go. Early start tomorrow." Olivia nodded, struggling to maintain her composure. "Safe travels." At the parlor door, he paused, looking back at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I will return, Olivia. That's a promise I intend to keep." After he left, Olivia remained in the parlor for a long while, absorbing the reality that tomorrow he would be gone. Yet, unlike previous partings in her life, this one carried hope rather than despair. Samuel would return, and in the meantime, she had a new life to build, one that was truly her own for the first time in years. The weeks following Samuel's departure established a new rhythm to Olivia's life in Santa Fe. True to his word, Deputy Marshal Collins checked on them regularly, reporting that there had been no sign of Maxwell or his men in the city. Letters from Samuel arrived faithfully each week, describing his progress in Arizona and asking about Olivia's activities in Santa Fe. Margaret encouraged Olivia's integration into the community, introducing her to select friends and involving her in charitable work at the local orphanage. Initially shy about meeting new people, Olivia gradually gained confidence as she was accepted without questions about her past. One crisp November morning, nearly a month after Samuel's departure, Margaret and Olivia were enjoying breakfast when Maria brought in the daily mail. Among the items was a telegram addressed to Olivia. "Perhaps it's from Samuel," Margaret suggested, noting Olivia's surprise at receiving a telegram. With slightly trembling fingers, Olivia opened the envelope and read the brief message. "Returning to Santa Fe, stop arriving Thursday afternoon, stop important news to share, stop Samuel, he's coming back," Olivia announced, joy flooding through her. "This Thursday," Margaret smiled knowingly. "Wonderful news, my dear, and just in time for Thanksgiving next week." The 2 days before Samuel's expected arrival passed with agonizing slowness for Olivia. She found herself checking the clock frequently, calculating how many hours remained before Thursday afternoon. Margaret observed her niece's anticipation with amused understanding, offering gentle distractions that only partially succeeded. When Thursday finally arrived, Olivia took extra care with her appearance, selecting a new dress in deep blue that Margaret had recently commissioned for her. As the afternoon progressed, she alternated between watching the street from the front window and trying to occupy herself with reading or needlework. The sound of the gate bell shortly after 4 o'clock sent her heart racing. Maria hurried to answer it, returning moments later with a broad smile. "Senor Jackson has arrived, señorita," she announced. Olivia rose from her chair just as Samuel entered the parlor. He looked travel-worn but healthy, his face tanned from weeks outdoors in the Arizona sun. Their eyes met across the room, and Olivia saw in his gaze all the longing she had felt during their separation. "Samuel," she said softly, taking a step toward him. "Olivia," he replied, his voice warm with affection. Margaret, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, cleared her throat delicately. "Welcome back, Samuel. We've missed your company terribly." With a knowing smile, she added, "I believe I hear Maria calling me to the kitchen. Excuse me, won't you?" After Margaret's tactful exit, Samuel crossed the room in a few long strides, taking Olivia's hands in his. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "And you look tired," she replied, studying his face. "Was the journey difficult?" "Worth every mile," he assured her, bringing her hands to his lips and pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "I've thought of you every day, as I have you," Olivia admitted. "Your letters were my greatest joy." Samuel smiled, the expression transforming his normally serious face. "I have much to tell you, but first," he released her hands only to cup her face gently between his palms. "May I?" In answer, Olivia rose on tiptoes and kissed him, all the longing of their separation channeled into the contact. Samuel's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. "I've imagined that moment for weeks." "Reality is better than imagination," Olivia murmured, earning a low chuckle from Samuel. "Indeed it is." He stepped back slightly, though he kept one hand at her waist. "I have news, Olivia, several pieces, in fact." They moved to the settee, sitting close enough that their shoulders touched. Samuel took a deep breath before beginning. "First, regarding Maxwell. He's been arrested and is awaiting trial in Santa Fe. The evidence against him is overwhelming, not just his operations in Chisholm Ranch, but similar establishments in 2 other territories." Relief washed through Olivia. "So it's truly over?" "Yes," Samuel confirmed. "Judge Bristol assures me that Maxwell faces years in prison. His influence has been broken." Olivia closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the finality of her freedom from Maxwell's shadow. "And the other news," Samuel shifted slightly to face her more directly. "I've resigned from the Pinkerton Detective Agency, effective immediately." Surprise rendered Olivia momentarily speechless. "But your career, your reputation, the agency understands my reasons," Samuel assured her. "In fact, they've offered me a different position that would allow me to remain in one location." Hope rose in Olivia's chest. "What position?" "Regional supervisor for New Mexico Territory, based here in Santa Fe. I would train new agents, coordinate investigations, and handle sensitive cases personally, but without the constant travel that defined my previous role." "Here in Santa Fe," Olivia repeated softly. "You would stay here." Samuel took her hands in his. "If I have reason to stay." The implication was clear, and Olivia's heart raced with possibilities she had scarcely allowed herself to consider. "What reason might that be, Samuel Jackson?" Instead of answering immediately, Samuel reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a small object. He opened his palm to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "This was my mother's," he said quietly. "I've carried it with me since her passing, waiting for." He paused, his voice roughening with emotion, waiting for someone worthy of its significance. Someone I could imagine spending my life alongside. Olivia stared at the ring, hardly daring to breathe. Olivia Thornton, Samuel continued, his eyes never leaving hers, when I found you in Chisholm Ranch, I was fulfilling a professional obligation. I never expected to discover a woman whose courage and resilience would challenge everything I believed about my future. A woman who would make me want to stop running from the past and start building something lasting. Tears blurred Olivia's vision as Samuel slid from the settee to one knee before her. I love you, Olivia, not despite your past, but including it, for it shaped the extraordinary woman you are today. He held up the ring. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? For a moment, Olivia couldn't speak past the emotion constricting her throat. All the pain and fear of her years at the Scarlet Feather, all the uncertainty and hope of the past weeks, everything converged in this perfect moment of possibility. Yes, she finally whispered, her voice gaining strength as she repeated, yes, Samuel, with all my heart, yes. Samuel's face transformed with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit as though made for her, the pearl gleaming softly in the afternoon light. He rose, drawing her up with him and into an embrace that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. Their kiss sealed the promise between them, a promise of shared futures, mutual respect, and abiding love. When they finally parted, Olivia saw tears in Samuel's eyes that mirrored her own. I never thought to find such happiness, she confessed. After everything, nor I, Samuel agreed. It seems we have both been granted a second chance at life, Olivia. Let's make the most of it together. Margaret's discreet cough from the doorway interrupted their moment. I take it congratulations are in order, she asked, though her knowing smile suggested she had anticipated this outcome all along. Samuel kept his arm around Olivia's waist as they turned to face her aunt. Mrs. Thornton, I've asked for Olivia's hand in marriage and she has accepted. I hope we have your blessing. My blessing and my wholehearted approval, Margaret declared, crossing the room to embrace them both. Though I must say, it's about time you asked her, Samuel. The suspense was becoming quite unbearable. They all laughed, the sound of shared joy filling the parlor as Margaret rang for Maria to bring champagne for a celebration. As the household erupted in excitement, Maria sharing the news with the other servants, Margaret discussing potential wedding dates, Olivia found a moment of quiet reflection. From the darkest chapter of her life had emerged a future brighter than she could have imagined. Samuel had not only rescued her from physical bondage, but had shown her that her spirit remained unbroken, capable of love, worthy of love, despite all attempts to diminish it. As Samuel caught her eye across the room and smiled a private expression of understanding and promise, Olivia silently acknowledged the truth she would forever hold dear. She belonged to herself alone, but she had freely chosen to share that self with the man who had reminded her of her worth. The wedding took place the following spring, when the gardens of Margaret's home burst with blossoms, and new growth, a fitting symbol for the life Olivia and Samuel were beginning together. It was a small ceremony attended by Margaret's closest friends, the Carsons from the trading post and a few of Samuel's colleagues from the Pinkerton office in Santa Fe. Judge Bristol himself officiated, taking particular satisfaction in uniting the couple whose journey had begun with his intervention against Vincent Maxwell, now serving the first year of a 15-year sentence in territorial prison. As Olivia spoke her vows beneath an arbor of climbing roses, she wore not only the pearl ring Samuel had given her, but also a simple gold locket containing miniature portraits of her parents, a gift from Margaret, who had preserved these memories for the day Olivia might wish to have them close to her heart again. Samuel, resplendent in a new black suit, looked at his bride with such undisguised adoration that several guests were moved to tears by the evident love between them. When he slipped the gold band onto Olivia's finger to join her engagement ring, his hands were steady, but his voice thick with emotion as he pledged his life to hers. I now pronounce you husband and wife, Judge Bristol declared to the assembled guests. What began in the darkness of injustice has emerged into the light of love, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of respect. As Samuel kissed his bride beneath the rose-covered arbor, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that she had found not just a husband but a true partner, one who valued her autonomy even as he cherished their union. 2 years later, on a warm summer evening, Samuel entered the garden of their home on the north side of Santa Fe to find Olivia seated on a bench beneath their favorite cottonwood tree, their infant son asleep in her arms. The sight still filled him with wonder. This family they had created together, this peace they had built from the ashes of their respective pasts. "How are my treasures?" he asked softly, joining her on the bench and placing a gentle kiss on her cheek. "Perfectly content," Olivia replied, smiling as their son, Thomas James Jackson, stirred briefly before settling back into slumber. "He just ate and will likely sleep until morning now." Samuel placed his arm around her shoulders, drawing her closer against his side. "And his mother? How does she fare today?" "Grateful," Olivia answered simply, leaning into his embrace. "Every day grateful." Samuel understood the depth behind that simple word. Their journey from the scarlet feather to this moment had been extraordinary, a path neither could have anticipated when he first said those fateful words in Maxwell's office. "She belongs to herself alone." In the end, that truth remained their foundation. Olivia belonged to herself, Samuel to himself, their marriage a daily choice to share those independent selves in love and partnership, rather than obligation or possession. As twilight deepened around them, painting the garden in hues of purple and gold, Samuel thought of how far they had come from that dusty street in Chisholm Ranch. The memories would always remain, but they no longer defined either of them. Instead, what defined them was this: a family forged in mutual respect, a love built on understanding rather than ownership, and a future where neither would ever again be property, only partners in all things until the end of their days.